God bless you, and welcome to the heart of Fiat Crucified Love. This week we are going to talk about Mother Teresa and her great thirst for Jesus. And so I put myself here. I was trying to figure out, because I don't have an image of Mother Teresa that's big, but I put myself here by Jesus thirsting on the cross, bloody and crucified, and offering himself to the Father, thirsting for our love more than anything else. And we're going to talk about Mother Teresa and her thirst, and how that thirst was the impetus for her to do much, much good in this world, right? And so I thought the most appropriate song to do at the beginning would be one with the Beatitudes, because Mother Teresa lived them so profoundly. So I found this morning, and I think I can play it. So we shall begin. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and enkindle in us the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and we will be recreated, and thou shalt renew the face of the earth. Amen. Blessed are they, the poor in spirit, theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are they, full of sorrow, they shall be consoled. Rejoice and be glad. Blessed are you, holy are you. Rejoice and be glad. Yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are they, the lowly ones, they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst, they shall have their fill. Rejoice and be glad. Blessed are you, holy are you. Rejoice and be glad. Yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are they who show mercy, mercy shall be theirs. Blessed are they, the pure of heart, they shall see God. Rejoice and be glad. Blessed are you, holy are you. Rejoice and be glad. seek peace. They are the children of God. Blessed are they who suffer faith. The glory of God is theirs. Rejoice and be glad. Blessed are you, holy are you. Rejoice and be glad. Yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who suffer hate, all because of me. Rejoice and be glad. Yours is the kingdom. Shine for all to see. Rejoice and be glad. Blessed are you, holy are you. Rejoice and be glad. Yours is the kingdom of God. Rejoice and be glad. Blessed are you, holy are you. Rejoice and be glad. Yours is the kingdom of God. Amen. Alleluia. Praise the Lord. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. That's what the apostle tells us. Do not have anxiety about anything. And that is what we hear in the Beatitudes today. We are going to talk about Mother Teresa's thirst. And I've got a whole slew of materials that I didn't have time to go through and retype them all out. So I just have it marked in these books. But what I want to talk about mostly is her thirst. Mother Teresa thirsted. She thirsted for God. She thirsted in darkness. She thirsted for love. And she spent her whole life wanting to assuage the thirst of others for food and water and for love, for comfort, for healing, but also just for the presence of God. She wanted to be that light. Jesus said to her those words, "Come be my light." And it's interesting that Mother Teresa, who was the gift of drink to so many thousands of souls, herself suffered thirst. First, she started to try to quench the thirst of Jesus on the cross through her own love and then through helping other people she met. But then his thirst became her thirst. And she began to suffer kind of as a victim, that thirst that he had. That was her greatest way to help the world, was not to give cups of water, but to suffer that dying thirst that Christ suffered on the cross. And if you go into any of her houses, I've been blessed to live with her sister's in Indiana for a little bit, and then in the Philippines too. And I visited her sisters in several places. And when you go into their convents and into their houses for the poor and their orphanages and stuff, there's always a crucifix on the wall, and above it is written, "I thirst." She wanted to give that message to the world. Probably my favorite line that Mother Teresa ever spoke was this. It resonates so powerfully in my soul. She said, "To be in love, yet not to love. To live by faith, and yet not to believe. To spend myself, and yet to be in total darkness." That shows the paradox that Mother Teresa lived, and it shows the degree that Jesus asked her to live in union with his suffering. She was madly in love with Jesus, and yet she felt as if she couldn't love. She lived totally by faith in total darkness, total desert dryness interiorly. And so she lived by this powerful faith, and yet she felt like she didn't even believe. Yet it was only her feeling. She spent herself. She would go to bed at 11 or 12 and wake up at 4, and she would work and she would pray. And no matter how much she wrung herself out to give drink to this world, she was in total darkness. To be in love, yet not to love. To live by faith and yet not to believe. To spend myself and yet to be in total darkness. And Mother Teresa one day called a bishop friend of hers on the phone, and right before she died, and she said to him that my key to heaven are these lines I just wrote. She said, "My key to heaven is that I loved Jesus in the night." It's another really beautiful line. My key to heaven is that I loved Jesus in the night. It's a little book all about that. It's called I Loved Jesus in the Night, The Secret to Mother Teresa. I recommend it. I loved Jesus in the night. One of the most powerful books I've ever read on her life was written by her priest friend, Joseph Langford. And it's called Mother Teresa's Secret Fire. He has a really beautiful way of explaining so much about her. But in one of the chapters here, I think before I even begin to read some of her quotes I want to share with you about her thirst, I want to pray with you this prayer of John Henry Newman that she prayed every day. And I used to pray it every day. I actually forgot about it until I was going through the book. And I thought, oh, where is my copy? I used to have it on my bathroom mirror. She used to just pray that she could be the light and that drink to souls for Jesus. And John Henry Newman's prayer was, "Dear Jesus, help us to spread your fragrance everywhere we go. Flood our souls with your spirit and life. Penetrate and possess our whole being so utterly that our lives may only be a radiance of yours. Shine through us and be so in us that every soul we come into contact with may feel your presence and our soul. Let them look up and see no longer us, but only Jesus. Stay with us, and then we shall begin to shine as you shine, so to shine as a light to others. The light, O Jesus, will be all from you. None of it will be ours. It will be you shining on others through us. Let us thus praise you in the way you love best, by shining on those around us. Let us preach you without preaching, not by words, but by your example, by the catching force, the sympathetic influence of what we do, the evident fullness of the love that our hearts bear to you. Amen. Mother Teresa was almost seemingly obsessed with the thirst of Jesus, and then that's why she came to not only quench it, but to share in it. And you can see it from the writing she had from the earliest days of her mission. She said, "Jesus is God, therefore his love and his thirst is infinite. We are called to quench this infinite thirst of a God-man. The sisters ceaselessly quench the thirsting God by their love and of the love of the souls that they bring to him. I long for God. I long to love him with every drop of life in me. What is the reason for our existence? We are here to satiate the thirst of Jesus, to proclaim the love of God, the thirst of Jesus, for souls by the holiness of our lives. We are here to satiate the thirst of Jesus. That is why we must be holy. I thirst. We are so busy to think about all that. Those words, I thirst, what do they echo in our souls? Today, let us try to go over that word. I thirst. Right today and every day, he is thirsting for my love. He is longing for me and my soul. It is very important for us to know that Jesus is thirsting for our love, for the love of the whole world. Ask yourself, have I heard Jesus directly say this word to me personally? Did I ever hear that word personally? I thirst. I want your love. If not, examine yourself. Why could I not hear? He longs for you. He thirsts for you. My children, once you have experienced the thirst, the love of Jesus for you, you will never need, you will never thirst for these things which can only lead you away from Jesus, the true and living fountain. Only the I thirst of Jesus, feeling it, bearing it, answering it with all of your heart, will keep your love alive. The closer you come to Jesus, the better you will know his thirst. Sometimes you think the closer you come to Jesus, the more you'll feel full. But sometimes when you get the closest to Jesus, he shares this longing, that emptiness he felt on the cross, that thirst with you. So the closer you come to him, the more you suffer the cross with him. Jesus only entrusts suffering, his thirst and his cross, to the souls that are closest to him. So the closer you draw, the more that he will trust you with that. Think about a friendship. When you're really close friends with somebody, they'll share the sufferings of their heart with you. But if you just know them as an acquaintance, they're going to pretend like there's nothing wrong. The same is with Jesus. It's only those that he's tested in fire, that he trusts, that he will share his sufferings with. Mother Teresa said, grow in that intimate love and you will understand not only I thirst, but everything. Humanly speaking, we cannot understand Jesus' words, love one another as I have loved you, or be holy as I am holy. But it all comes under those words, I thirst. The fruit of faith is the understanding of I thirst. Get rid of sin quickly so that we can hear Jesus say, I thirst for your love. The most important thing is that we must encounter the thirst of Jesus, but the encounter with Jesus' thirst is a grace. What is that word, I thirst, to you personally? What connection do you make in your life? The strong grace of divine light and love that Mother received on the train on September 10th, 1946, is where the missionaries of charity begin. In the depths of God's infinite longing to love and be loved. So those are her words to her sisters about those, Jesus's words, I thirst. What else does Mother Teresa say? Instead of me talking about her, I'm just going to share these quotes with you. My prayer for you is that you may experience the thirsting love of Jesus for each one of you. The strong grace of divine light and love that I received on the train is where the missionaries of charity begin, in the depths of God's infinite longing to love and be loved. How important it is for each soul to desire deeply to share that same grace of thirst. Mother Teresa did not receive this grace of thirsting for God for herself. Jesus shared it so that she could be an instrument of grace for all of the souls that she encountered around her. She said, He has created us to love and to be love. And this is the beginning of prayer, to know that He loves me and that I have been created for greater things. Do you know the depths of greatness that you were created for? Each soul. So few attain to the greatness that God created them to be. And she talks about reaching that greatness through silence, that's where it all begins. The first means to use for God to recreate your soul is silence. She says souls of prayer are souls of great silence. We cannot put ourselves directly in the presence of God if we do not practice both internal and external silence. She says, night after night, sleep disappears, only to spend those hours longing for His coming. I have such a deep longing for God. When I'm alone in the streets, I talk to you, Jesus, for hours. My longing is for you. I long for God. I long to love Him with every drop of life in me. And it's almost like she loved Him with every drop of love to the point where she felt dried up like a desert and she experienced thirst. But it was only because she was quenching His thirst to that great degree. And this is very similar to what other saints have lived. I'll just kind of give a little interjection here. You know, St. John of the Cross explains in his spiritual canticle this great thirst, this great longing. He says, all my occupation now is the practice of the love of God. All the powers of my soul and body, my memory, understanding, and will, interior and exterior senses, the desires of spirit and sense, all work in and by love. All I do is done in love. All I suffer is suffer in the sweetness of love. That's the degree that Mother Teresa grew to. And it's interesting because at the end of this book, it explains in different places of her writing, all the way from 1947 up until right before her death in 1997. So that's 50 years of her writing about the thirst of Jesus. I'm going to read you what she wrote. In 1947 is that line that I just read. Night after night, sleep disappears, and only to spend those hours longing for His coming, the same longing breaks into the sleep. Jesus is God, therefore His love and His thirst is infinite. We are called to quench the infinite thirst of this God-made man. She writes this in 1949. His burning thirst for souls and His thirst for love. In 1954, she says, we carry on our body and soul the love of an infinite thirsty God. In 1957, she says, I have such a deep longing for God. 1959, when alone in the streets, I talk to you for hours. My longing is for you. Jesus, hear my prayer. If this pleases you, if my pain and suffering, my darkness and separation gives you a drop of consolation, My own Jesus, do with me as you wish, as long as you wish, without a single glance at my feelings and pain. I am your own. Imprint on my soul and life the sufferings of your heart. Don't mind my feelings. Don't mind even my pain. If separation from you brings others to you, and in their love and company you find joy and pleasure, why, Jesus, I am willing with all of my heart to suffer all that I suffer, not only now, but for all eternity. If this was possible, your happiness is all that I want. For the rest, please do not take the trouble. Even if you see me faint with pain, all this is my will. I want to satiate your thirst with every single drop of blood that you can find within me. In 1960, she said, I long for God. I long to love him with every drop of life in me. In 1965, she said, here we have real spiritual slums. Just as our people in India hunger and thirst for food of the body, our people here hunger and thirst for the word of God. In 1973, she said, he has a deep and personal longing to have you for himself. He thirsts for you. Let him do it. 1974, she says, the aim of the co-workers is to spread love and compassion, to satiate the thirst of Jesus for love in a very simple way and a very small way. 1977, she said, we have to quench the thirst of Jesus for others and for me, for love of others and for love of us, by each action done to the sick and the dying. I quench the thirst of Jesus for love of that person. By my giving God's love in me to that particular person, this is how I quench the thirst of Jesus for others, by giving his love in action to them. We also quench the thirst of Jesus for love of me by that personal meeting with him, face to face. In 1980, the reason of our existence is to quench the thirst of Jesus. When he asks for water, the soldiers gave him vinegar to drink, but his thirst was for love, for souls. We human beings are asked to satiate the thirst of God. Look at him on the cross. What is the reason for our existence? We are here to satiate the thirst of Jesus, to proclaim the love of Christ, the thirst of Jesus for souls by the holiness of our lives. We are here to satiate the thirst of Jesus. That is why we must be holy. I thirst. We are so busy to think about all of that. Those words, I thirst, do they echo in your souls? Today, let us try to go over that word, I thirst. In 1981, she said, every human being has a longing for God. My soul is thirsting for God. Look at the cross and see those words, I thirst. Satiate the infinite thirst of God. Just like I'm thirsting for water, I must feel that same thirst for Jesus. In 1982, Mother Teresa said, right today and every day, he is thirsting for my love. He is longing for me, right in my soul. In 1983, she says, our aim is to satiate the infinite thirst of God. The reason of our existence is to quench the thirst of God. I don't even say Jesus or on the cross, but of God. Try to deepen your understanding of these two words, thirst of God. It is very important for us to know that Jesus is thirsting for our love, for the love of the whole world. Ask yourself, have I heard Jesus directly say this word to me personally? Did I ever hear that word personally? I thirst. I want your love. If not, examine yourself. Why could I not hear? 1985, that word, I thirst, has it penetrated into your heart? We are called to quench the thirst of God. 1986, Who will bring those souls to him to satiate the thirst of the infinite God dying of love? Can you and I continually stand by as a mere spectator or pass by and do nothing? 1992. She said, "Are we truly seeking to satiate the thirst of God, our loving Father in heaven, for our holiness? The thirst which Jesus expressed on the cross when he cried out, 'I thirst'? Seek wholeheartedly to love God and long to find him. In this way, you satiate the thirst of God, who thirsts for us to thirst for him." At this most difficult time, he proclaimed, "I thirst," and people thought he was thirsty in an ordinary way, and they gave him vinegar straight away. But it was not for that thirst. It was for our love, our affection, our intimate attachment to him, and that sharing of his passion. He used "I thirst" instead of saying, "Give me your love." I thirst. Let us hear him saying it to me and saying it to you. In 1993, Mother Teresa wrote, "Jesus himself must be the one to say to you, 'I thirst.' Hear your own name. Not just once, every day. If you listen with your heart, you will hear and you will understand. Remember this, I thirst is something much deeper than Jesus saying, 'I love you.' Until you know deep inside that Jesus thirsts for you, you can't begin to know who he wants to be for you or who he wants you to be for him." How to approach the thirst of Jesus? Only one secret. The closer you come to Jesus, the better you will know his thirst. Repent and believe, Jesus tells us. What are we to repent? Our indifference, our hardness of heart. What are we to believe? That Jesus thirsts even now, in your heart, and the poor. He knows your weakness. He wants only your love and wants only the chance to love you. He is not bound by time. Whenever we come close to him, we become partners with Our Lady, St. John, the Magdalene, I would say St. Veronica. Hear him, hear your own name. Make my and your joy complete. He longs for you. He thirsts for you. My children, once you have experienced the thirst, the love of Jesus for you, you will never thirst for these things which can only lead you away from Jesus, the true and living fountain. Only the thirst of Jesus, feeling it, hearing it, answering it with all your heart, will keep your love alive. The closer you come to Jesus, the better you will know his thirst. The longing for holiness is prayer. 1994. Jesus is thirsting for us right now. Do we listen to him saying, "I thirst for your love"? Just think of his thirst. Do we really hear him? Here in this chapel, his mouth is open, and we know he is saying it right now. Grow in that intimate love, and you will understand not only I thirst, but everything. Get rid of sin so that you can hear Jesus say, "I thirst for your love." Know that the encounter with Jesus' thirst is itself a grace. That boy and girl who fall in love with each other, that love is I thirst. You have to experience it. The same thing, we come to that conviction. His love is thirst. Love and thirst are the same word. We are very fortunate that Jesus has disclosed his thirst to us. The question, when was the first time that you experienced Jesus' thirst? Mother Teresa said, "My first communion." It was a reality, not just an experience. Do you feel the terrible thirst of Jesus? She asks. Do you feel it? Do you hear his voice? Do you really hear his voice? If not, you have never known his real love for you. Put your whole heart to satiate the thirst of Jesus. What is that word, I thirst, to you personally? What connection do you make it with your life? In 1996, the strong grace of divine light and love that Mother received on the train is in the depths of God's infinite longing to love and be loved. How important it is for each to desire deeply to share that same grace. We ask for the most important thing, to stand under the cross of Jesus and to hear him say, I thirst. Just take the trouble to be close to Jesus, to hear him say, I thirst to you individually, to understand his word, to love it, to live it. As Jesus did to Mother, he now does to you. Try to hear it properly. And in 1997, shortly before her death, she said, on the cross, he said very clearly, I thirst. For what was he thirsting? For love, for that tender love from all of us to satiate the thirst of God. Let us understand the thirst of Jesus as well as we can. The better we understand it, the more close we get to him. Have we understood this thirst? Do we know it? Have we experienced his thirst? Jesus came into the world to draw souls closer to his Father. Just think, God is thirsting for you and for me to come forward to satiate his thirst. God spoke of his infinite thirst for each of us and for all of his children, especially the poorest of the poor, through his beloved Son, Jesus Christ, dying on the cross. I believe he said 2 or 3 times, I thirst. Terrible suffering, to see his suffering. What is the meaning of I thirst? Everybody understood it was for water, not for compassion, not for love, for compassion. Sorry, everybody, yes, understood it was for water, and they did not understand it was for love and compassion. Jesus himself said, I thirst, right on the cross. That was love's word. He did not say anything else after that. Try to deepen your knowledge of those words, I thirst. Now, Mother Teresa is not the first saint in the history of the church to experience or to reflect on those words. Many saints before her did, but it is the word that consumed her life. Some of the other saints that spoke about the thirst of Jesus was St. Augustine. He said, God thirsts to be thirsted for. On the cross, Jesus said, I thirst, but they didn't give him what he thirsted for. He thirsted for them, and they gave him vinegar. He asks for a drink, and he promises a drink. He is in need as one hoping to receive, yet he is rich as one about to satisfy the thirst of others. So that was St. Augustine. St. Bonaventure spoke about this. In Jesus is revealed God's thirst to pour forth life. He thirsts not out of lack, but out of overabundance. The love of God by itself is self-effusive. St. Bernard of Clairvaux said, by his thirst, the Lord Jesus places before us an image of his ardent love for us. St. Thomas Aquinas said, we see Jesus' ardent desire for the salvation of the human race. Now the vehemence of his desire is clearly expressed in his thirst. St. Robert Bellarmine, our Lord said, I thirst in the same sense in which he addressed the Samaritan woman, saying, give me a drink. It's interesting, when I was in Russia, I had to give a reflection to the priests and other missionaries in Russian on Good Friday. And they told me to grab a theme, and I did that of I thirst. And I connected, just like Robert Bellarmine here, Jesus' words, I thirst, and the woman at the well in Samaria, right? Where he said, give me a drink. For when he unfolded the mystery contained in these words, he added, if you but knew the gift of God and who it is that says to you, give me to drink, you would have asked of him, and he would have given you living water. Does he not refer to himself in saying, if any man thirsts, let him come to me and drink? Is he not that rock of which the apostle says, and they drink of the spiritual rock which followed them, and the rock was Christ? Is it not he who addressed the Jews by the mouth of Jeremiah the prophet? They have forsaken me, the fountain of living water. They have dug themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that hold no water. It seems to me then that our Lord from the cross, as from a high throne, casts his gaze over the whole world, full of people who are athirst and fainting from exhaustion, and by reason of his parched state, he pities the drought which mankind endures, and he cries aloud, I thirst. The thirst that I suffer from my desire that men should know by faith that I am the true fount of living water, should come to me and drink, that they may not thirst forever. That's Robert Bellarmine. St. Catherine of Siena wrote, O sweetest, boundless, beloved charity, it was your infinite hunger and thirst for our salvation that made you cry out that you were thirsty. Though your agony caused you intense physical thirst, your thirst for our salvation was greater. There is no one to give you anything to drink except the bitterness of sin upon sin. How few there are who give you drink with pure loving affection. There on the cross, they, the saints, found in the Lamb slain such a fire of love for our salvation that it seemed insatiable. He even cries aloud that he is thirsty, as if to say, I have more zeal, more thirst, more desire for your salvation than I can show you in this infinite suffering. There on the cross, we find the Lamb slain, opened up for us with such a hungry desire for the Father's honor and our salvation, that it seems he cannot effectively show by his bodily suffering alone all he longs to give. It seems that this is what he meant when he cried out on the cross, I am thirsty, as if to say, I have so great a thirst for your salvation, I cannot satisfy it. Give me to drink. The gentle Jesus was asking to drink those he saw not sharing in the redemption purchased by his blood. But he was given nothing to drink but bitterness, not only at the time of the crucifixion, but later on. And even now we continue to see him asking for this kind of drink, showing us that his thirst persists. St. Therese of Lisieux said, Jesus' words, I thirst, set aflame in me a lively and unknown ardor. I wanted to satiate my beloved. I felt myself devoured by his same thirst for souls. I seemed to hear Jesus saying to me, as to the Samaritan, give me to drink. And the more I gave him to drink, the more the thirst of my soul grew. Jesus doesn't need our work, but only our love. For the same God is not afraid to beg a bit of water from the Samaritan. He thirsted. But in saying, give me to drink, it was the love of his poor creature that the creator of the universe was asking. He thirsted for love. St. Lawrence Justinian said, what Christ said to the Samaritan woman, give me to drink, he repeats to all of us from the cross when he says, I thirst. This word, I thirst, which Jesus pronounced on the cross when he was expiring, was not a thirst which proceeded from dryness, but one that arose from the ardor of love that Jesus had for us. This thirst springs from the fever of his love. Because by his word, our Redeemer intended to declare to us, more than the thirst of his body, the desire he had of suffering for us, by showing us his love and the immense desire that he had of being loved by us, by the many sufferings he endured for us. This was his thirst. He thirsts for us, and he desires to give himself to us. St. Basil of Seleucia said Jesus Christ, in saying that he thirsted, would give us to understand that he, for the love which he bore us, was dying with the desire of suffering for us, even more than what he had suffered. That desire was greater than the passion. St. Alphonsus Liguori said, "The scripture which was to be fulfilled in the text of David, and in my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink. But, O Lord, you are silent about the intense pains which hasten your death. And do you complain of thirst?" The thirst of Jesus was very different from that which we imagine it to be. His thirst was the desire of being loved by the soul for whom he dies. Thus, my Jesus, do you thirst for me? And shall I not thirst after you who are an infinite God? But Lord, how is it that you make no complaint of those many pains which are taking away your life? You complain only of your thirst for love. I understand you, my Jesus. Your thirst is a thirst for love. Because you loved us, you desired to be beloved by us through the passion and the death of Jesus Christ. St. Margaret Mary Alacoque said, "One of my greatest sufferings was caused by the divine heart addressing to me these words, 'I thirst with such a terrible thirst to be loved by men in the Blessed Sacrament, that this thirst consumes me. Yet I find no one trying to quench it according to my desire, by some return for my love.' How can we return his love for love?" Sister Consolata Betrone, Jesus said to her, "Love me, I thirst for your love as a parched man thirsts for a spring of fresh water. Tell all souls I prefer an act of love to any other gift that they make to me. I thirst for love." To Sister Josefa Mendez, Jesus said, "I love them. Nothing indeed is wanting to my heavenly beatitude, which is infinite. I yearn for souls. I thirst for them. I love to hear you calling me. I thirst for love. Do not cease thinking of souls and sinners. I thirst for souls. Yes, give me to drink. I'm thirsty. You know well that I'm thirsting for souls, the souls that I love so much. You can give me to drink." We can give him to drink by bringing him souls. "I was thirsty and you slaked my thirst. I will be your reward. Yes, my one desire is to be loved. If souls but knew the excess of my love, they would not disregard it. That is why I go seeking them out, to have them come back to me. I will return this evening that you may slake my devouring thirst, and I shall take my rest in you." He wants to take his rest in you, too. "Come, satisfy my thirst to be loved by souls, especially to be loved by those chosen souls. Behold a heart on fire with longing for your love. Share with me the flames consuming my heart. I thirst for the salvation of souls. If only they would come to me. My heart gives divine worth to all of your small sacrifices and offerings, for what I want is love. What is so wounding to my heart is that often instead of love, I meet only with indifference. Give me love, give me souls, unite all your actions to my heart. Stay with me who am with you. I am love and I desire only love. If souls only realized how I wait for them in mercy. When you call me, I'm very near to you, but when I call to souls, they don't hear me. They go away. You at least comfort me by calling me, for longing for me, for answering me. Satisfy my thirst by your desire of me. St. Padre Pio suffered that same thirst that Mother Teresa did. He said, "My heart feels as if it were being drawn by a superior force, which morning, just before uniting with him in the Blessed Sacrament, each morning, I have such a thirst and hunger before receiving him that it's a wonder I don't die of anxiety. When Mass ended, I remained with Jesus to render him thanks. My thirst and hunger do not diminish after I have received him in the Blessed Sacrament, but rather increase steadily. How sweet was the conversation I held with Paradise this morning, the heart of Jesus and my own, if you will pardon my expression, fused into one. They were no longer two hearts beating, but only one. My heart disappeared as if it was in the drop of an ocean." Sister Mary of the Trinity said, Jesus said to her, "How I thirst for souls, how I long for them to surrender themselves to me so that I may transform them, for them to surrender their humanity to me so I can work in the world. Why do you not hear my call? Have I not exhausted every means to beg your attention and your gratitude?" St. Julian of Norwich said, "For this is Christ's spiritual thirst, his longing and love which persists and always will, to gather us all into him, our endless joy. With all the power of the divinity, he suffered pain and passion and died of love to bring us bliss. He says, it's a joy, a bliss, an endless delight that I suffered my passion for you. For he still has the same thirst and longing which he had on the cross. That desire, longing, and thirst, as I see it, were in him without a beginning. This quality of longing and thirst comes from God's everlasting goodness. Though he may have both longing and mercy, they're different qualities as I see them. This is the characteristic of spiritual thirst, which will persist in him as long as we are in need and will draw us into his bliss. Mother Catherine Aroulier said, "The mysterious thirst which the divine crucified one breathed from the height of his cross found an echo in my poor heart. I have meditated upon it and I have relished it. I have understood it. In my turn, I've cried in ardent transports, I thirst. Words fail me to express the extent of the burning desire which has gushed from the heart of my Jesus into mine. Jesus is thirsty for love. I crave for hearts that will return him love for love, hearts that will unite themselves in prayer, reparation, and suffering to that of the holy victim who knew so perfectly how to love, how to obey, how to suffer, in order to procure the happiness and salvation of souls. Would that all hearts might hear his thirst and thus become springs of living water to quench him." Fulton Sheen says, "The cry of Christ from the cross, I thirst, refers not to a physical thirst, for he refused the drink they offered him. It was his soul that was burning and his heart on fire. He was thirsting for the souls of men. The shepherd was lonely without his sheep. The Creator was yearning for his creatures." From St. Augustine in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, it says, "If you knew the gift of God, the wonder of prayer is revealed beside the well where we come seeking water. There Christ comes to meet every human being. It is he who first seeks us and asks us for a drink. Jesus thirsts. His asking arises from the depths of God's desire for us. Whether we realize it or not, prayer is an encounter of God's thirst with our thirst. God thirsts that we may thirst for him. You would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Paradoxically, our prayer of petition is a response to the plea of the living God. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living water, and hewn out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that hold no water. Prayer is the response of faith to the free promise of salvation, and also a response of love to the thirst of the Son of God. And Pope Benedict XVI also spoke of this. Christ's thirst is an entranceway into the mystery of God. I think when we look at Mother Teresa's thirst in this context, it makes sense to us. And you know, to satiate the thirst of Christ does not mean to start a religious order like some of these great saints did. It's to do little things. Mother Teresa herself said, there are many people who can do big things, but there are very few people who will do little things. Christ looks at those details. He wants us to do little things with great love. And Mother Teresa wrote towards the end of her life, for my meditation, I'm using the passion of Jesus. I'm afraid that I make no meditation, but I only look at Jesus suffer, and I keep repeating, let me share with you this pain. If my pain and suffering, my darkness and separation give you a drop of consolation, my own Jesus, do with me as you wish. I am your own. Imprint on my soul and life the suffering of your heart. If my separation from you brings others to you, I'm willing with all of my heart to suffer all that I suffer. Your happiness is all that I want. I have begun to love my darkness, for I believe now that it's a very small part of Jesus' darkness and his pain on earth. I want to satiate your thirst. With every single drop of blood that you can find in me, please do not take the trouble to return to me soon. I am ready to wait for you for all eternity. She almost came to enjoy her thirst because she knew that it was in her thirst that she had union with him, that she was helping him the most. And finally, here from her letters, she said, do not think that my spiritual life is strewn with roses. That is the flower which I hardly ever find on my way. Quite the contrary. I more often have as my companion darkness. And when the night becomes very thick and it seems to me as if I will end up in hell, then I simply offer myself to Jesus. If he wants me to go there, I am ready, but only under the condition that I really makes him happy. I need much grace, much of Christ's strength to persevere and trust in that blind love which leads only to Jesus crucified. But I am happy. I am happier than ever, and I would not wish at any price to give up my suffering. But do not, however, think that I am only suffering. No, I'm laughing more than I'm suffering, so that some have concluded that I'm Jesus' spoiled bride, who lives with him in Nazareth, far away from Calvary. Please pray very much for me, for I really need his love. In that letter, you see this great thirst of Mother Teresa. And it's something, like I said at the beginning, she entered into when Jesus said, come be my light. Well, she became his light by entering his darkness, right? My key to heaven is that I love Jesus in the night, she said. To be in love and yet not to love. To live by faith and yet not to believe. To spend myself and yet to be in total darkness. Sweet Jesus, we ask for the grace to thirst more for your love and for lives that satiate your thirst. We thank you for the grace of meditating on your thirst today, and we ask the intercession of Mother Teresa that we can quench your thirst for love by the kindness that we show to souls through giving them food and drink and clothing, like the Beatitudes said. Like you said in Matthew 25, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. But we also want to quench people's spiritual thirst for truth. We want to quench your thirst for souls by bringing people to you, by teaching them to love you. We pray for my work, especially through these books and podcasts and rosaries and art, for this ministry, that they may quench your thirst for love. They may light souls on fire for your love. But the deepest thirst that you thirst for is our own souls. That we not only will be on have such ardent love for you, on fire with love for you, that it quenches your thirst, but that we're willing to endure your thirst with you. That we can be victims of your love and mercy with you. We praise and we thank you and we glorify you for all of these things, which are your graces. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. And I suggest, if you want to read more about that thirst and that interior suffering of Christ, get my book, Out of the Darkness. And it takes you through a meditation on the interior passion of Christ and his great love for you. God bless you, and I'll see you next week.